Hello, everybody. Welcome to John Howard Society's speaker series. This is the evolution of our national conference, which we transferred into a virtual session weekly through the summer. And we'll now be hosting continued ongoing professional development and training sessions monthly on the same platform. So we're very happy to welcome John Howard Society staff and partners and connections across the country to join us on these sessions. This month, we have a focus on restorative justice. So we have two representatives from John Howard Societies in BC who are here to speak about the programs that they deliver. So just to acknowledge that, good morning, Angela. I work on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, mainly in the Lower Mainland. And we also have Nathalie Down, who is here representing John Howard Society of Victoria, and Michelle LaBoucane from John Howard Society Okanagan and Kootenay. And I'd just like to invite you to acknowledge the land that you are also located in.
Yeah, thank you. So I live and work on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish and LaBoucane people. So thank you.
Thanks, Nathalie. And Michelle?
And I work and live in the traditional and unceded territory of the Syilx and Okanagan peoples.
Brilliant. Thank you. So first of all, we're going to have a presentation from Nathalie regarding the programs that she has led in schools in and around Victoria. And then Michelle will be presenting on the shoplifting prevention program. So with that, I will hand over to Nathalie. Oh, sorry, one thing I should mention is that if you have questions along the way, please submit them in the right-hand side in the chat box. Myself, Nathalie, and Michelle will be monitoring the questions, and then we'll answer as many as we can with the time that allows at the end of the two sessions. Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, hi. Okay, so I'm just gonna get my slideshow up here. Okay, thanks everyone for joining today. I am going to be chatting about restorative practices in schools and specifically the Girls Circle program that we are redesigning in response to COVID-19. So just a little bit of a background on who I am and where I'm coming from. So I'm the former coordinator of the John Howard Victoria programs, the restorative justice program called Saanich Community Justice Initiatives, and also the Kids Start Mentoring program. I designed and facilitated Girls Circles programs across Victoria from 2010 to 2015 in middle schools. And then in 2015, I ventured into the world of tech, specifically user experience design and research after my graduate studies in Toronto. And since COVID, I've returned to designing community education programs with the John Howard Society of Victoria. And my current project is to redesign the Girls Circle program to meet the emerging needs of restorative justice school programs during pandemic times. Sorry, I'm just going to take a drink. So today I'll be talking about the structure, the philosophy, and benefits of restorative practices such as Girls Circle in local middle schools. What led the John Howard Society of Victoria to offer this kind of program in the new COVID school year, and what the considerations and questions are that come into play when redesigning the program for the emergent needs and constraints of students, families, communities, and schools in these pandemic times. So just a little background on restorative practices in schools. They come in many different forms. Most of you are familiar with restorative justice, the traditional conflict resolution practices, but restorative practices in schools are really focused on prevention. So rather than waiting for something to happen, we work on developing skills, taking a relational approach to education, educating students about healthy communication skills, what respectful relationships are like, taking an approach that where we really seek to transform the relationships of the schools. Instead of expulsion and punishment, we're looking at programs that can empower change and growth and encourage healthy communication. So Girls Circle is an example of a prevention program where we work with groups of girls and develop these sorts of skills. And there have been lots of case studies, if you're interested, in schools, specifically in the States, that have been completely transformed through restorative practices, where violence has gone down, academic success has increased, and yeah, really just about a relational approach to education. So the Girls Circle program that I have worked with focuses specifically with preteen girls, so middle school girls aged 10 to 14, and they are a particularly vulnerable group. Since 2010, the rates of self-harm and suicide have increased exponentially, 190% increase since 2010 of preteen girls admitted to hospital for self-harm. Suicide up 150% for preteen girls. It's the highest spike in any youth group, age group or gender. And this pattern really points to social media. So Gen Z is the first generation who got on youth who got on social media in middle school. And this has been linked to significant increases in depression and anxiety, and specifically for girls, new forms of body dysmorphia. There's a new term in medical communities called Snapchat dysmorphia, where girls are wanting to look like the filtered versions of themselves and are seeking out medical procedures before they've even hit puberty to try to take on these, the images. They'll come in with images of their filtered selfie and ask to be turned into that. So there's a whole bunch of new pressures coming at preteen girls, and offering the Girls Circle program is aimed at preventing some of these harms that can lead to ultimately the worst thing, suicide and self-harm. So what is Girls Circle? For those of you who aren't familiar with it, basically it's a structured support group. We meet weekly, once a week, for girls and youth who identify with female development. It's a space that really is about confidentiality. It's about a sacred space. We always involve a ceremony at the beginning. The first session is about coming up with guidelines of how we want to work together as a group. And it's about co-designing the process. So I'll never say, this is how we're going to be. I'll ask the girls, how do we want to be together? And we come up with guidelines for communication. They always end up looking kind of the same. I'll massage it a bit. But respecting each other when we're speaking. We would traditionally use a talking piece. Would come up with our own special ceremony for each group, whether that's sharing a poem or lighting a candle or beating a drum. It really depended on the group and what resonated for them. There's also, before the group starts, we bring in food, and there's typically 2 facilitators. Bring in lots of healthy food, we play music and just kind of hang out for a bit, and then move to circle, and that's when the sort of sacred space really begins. After the ceremony, we do a check-in round with various different questions. If you were an animal today, what animal would you be and why? If you could have any superpower, what would that be right now and why? If you could be a color, what color would you be? So we're looking to get people to express how they're feeling, and recognizing that that varies from week to week and from girl to girl. And trying to kind of create a baseline for understanding that maybe Sonia's not feeling super well today. She was gray. Or someone wants to just be a cat who sleeps all day, so we can understand that they're tired. So really trying to understand where people are coming from. Then we get into a topic of the week. There's a few topics on the slideshow. And we have lots of different art activities. Usually they're pretty creative and hands-on in nature. Then we'll do a debrief session where everybody goes around and shares what that was like for them, what thoughts came up. And then we do a closing ceremony to mark the end of that sacred space. And the girls self-select to come into the program. It's usually an elective style program for about 2 hours. I've also held it during lunch hour, and I've also held it as an after-school program. So the restorative justice, or how John Howard Victoria has come into this work, I'll just give you a little bit of a background. So they had launched a restorative justice school program in 2019 and had received a lot of support and funding. And this was designed to be a traditional restorative justice conflict resolution program. So offering the RJ circles and diversion processes for conflict, violence, harm, and it reached out across the school board and partnered with 6 schools. They received 14 referrals and did 8 circles and 4 diversion processes. They had some great successes and a few challenges. 70% were completed and 20% closed due to withdrawal of participants. The main challenges were the logistics of organizing a circle where the facilitator was not able to reach out to the participants. So it required a lot of administration on behalf of the school, of having to talk to parents, talk to students, arrange a space, which is usually a time-consuming aspect of the facilitator. So that was a bit of a setback and led some schools to not perhaps offering the service when they could have. And also, of course, the program was cut short in March when the pandemic hit. So unfortunately, we were not able to do, it was my colleague Andrea who was running this program, and we were not able to do any feedback. It just kind of went off the table, but we still had the funding, and we had to come up with a new way of looking at things, because the traditional RJ process was not going to work under the new COVID regulations. So we had to adapt. We had, or we have a bunch of funding. We have relationships built, and our aim is to offer restorative programs in the schools. So we had to think, well, what could we do that is going to meet the new needs? What is going to fit within the new normal? So that's why we decided to redesign Girls Circle. We thought it would be of big value in pandemic times in 2020. There's specifically some elements of it that as students are facing a lot of stress, new forms of isolation, and experiencing fear just in the general communities and at home, there's some elements that particularly stand out in how to build resiliency and increase healthy communities. So the shared values and ceremony aspects, a sacred space, that's something that can be very de-stressing for students. The importance of checking in, just going around and asking, how are you? What color are you today? Simple things like that often get overlooked with youth. Adults will check in and ask each other how they're doing, but often kids' voices aren't heard. So the importance of checking in and learning how to check in with each other, with their own peers, is a really important skill during these times. Sharing stories without judgment. It's a confidential space. We really respect is of utmost importance, listening to people. There's no smirks, like we're recognizing each other as equals in the group. So sharing stories without judgment. And without advice giving, just being able to speak freely and be heard. Acknowledging our interconnectedness. Even though we're isolated, we're not alone. So understanding that there's other people going through these same feelings that you're going through, that the community is connected to the school, is connected to the family, and hearing stories from other girls helps understand our interconnectedness. And creating supportive communities. A lot of School programs have been cut off. A lot of after-school programs, sports programs have been cut off. There's not the same spaces in schools because they're working in those cohorts, learning groups. So we want to create a supportive community for the girls, and so that they can know that there's places to go, to talk to feel safe. So what does Girls Circle look like in pandemic times? Traditionally, we are meeting in groups of 8 to 10 girls with 2 facilitators, and we do they come from all different classrooms. So we're needing to rethink and redesign. How do we build social cohesion in a time of social isolation? And there's lots of questions that we're dealing with here. We're connecting with schools, we're finding out their needs. We're thinking to offer a shorter program rather than the traditional year-long program, to offer a 6 to 8 week program and maybe offer it more often. So have a group of 5 girls and 1 facilitator, but offer that 2 or 3 times during the week. Also looking at an online offering for students who are learning from home. What would that look like? Or is there some sort of hybrid? If we're not able to meet regularly, can we do online check-ins? Recognizing that there is a higher resource demand for this. Having smaller groups requires double the work. Having to translate all of the activities into doing things online is a lot of work from the development side. So there's a much higher resource demand for that. And just a bunch of questions that we're asking. How do masks affect our ability to listen and empathize with each other? If we are doing it in person, are talking pieces allowed? These are vital parts for group, vital aspect of group listening. Would it work the same way if we had a dial or a feather that we pointed to someone? But then there's that tangible soothingness of holding an item when you're talking that allows you to speak freely. And also the increased mental health problems and impacts of social isolation and public fear. Will parents allow their children to participate? So these are all the sorts of questions that we're working with right now and trying to redesign engagement for this program. And what we're doing in order to do this, we're taking a human-centered approach from design thinking. It comes from the world of tech, where you ask the people that you're working with what they need. So traditionally, we would design a fully baked program. I'd have all the topics, the weeks all set out, and I would go to the schools and say, here's the program. Do you want it? Yes, great. We're going to deliver it. This is a different approach. We are going to the schools. We are saying, this is our idea. This is how we used to do it, but what are your needs? And how can we design a program that helps you meet your needs? Recognizing that every school has a have different needs, have different constraints. So in doing this, hopefully we'll be able to come up with some variations of delivering. And luckily we have the funding secured, and we have the program history, the relationships with various schools that allow us for rapid prototyping. So we're hoping to be ready to go for October, and then wrapping up in December, and learning as we go. Just one last note before wrapping up, that if we do go online, or if we do hybrid, it's really important to view these measures as temporary. It's a slippery slope because it can be a lot cheaper, it can be easier not to travel, there's no snacks required, all that stuff. But the value of meeting in person is so important for this learning, the value of body language, of eye contact, of holding a talking piece. Those are such important element of ceremony. How do you do ceremonies online? These are so important, the in-person aspects. And although we can attempt to create online spaces and circles, online spaces are often unsafe places for youth. They're bullied, they're screenshotted, you don't know who's listening in the background. So attempting to create a confidential, sacred space online is something that comes with its own set of challenges. And even if we are able to do it, it's not always accessible to people. There's technology barriers, and lots of people don't live in homes where they have private spaces. Their brother could be listening, their mom could be listening. And we're trying to offer a program where the students are free to speak about what's going on at home and their true feelings. So online isn't necessarily the best replacement, but if we have to do that, we will do that. Okay, so I'm just a minute over time. Great. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to get in touch, I have my email there and also the contact information for the John Howard Society. Shirley is the program manager there. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing what happens. We're in contact with schools, and yeah, hopefully we'll have an update for you later on.
Thank you so much, Nathalie. That was so interesting. Yeah, and many things that are really important to consider as we're trying to adapt our programming. So thanks for the insights on that. I'm sure lots of people will generate some questions as they kind of percolate on your presentation. And at this point, I could hand over to Michelle as well in Kelowna to speak about the shoplifting prevention program.
Thank you. I'm just going to get my slides up. I was very impressed and be able to take over this program back in 2014. And when I came on board, we had partnered with the Elizabeth Fry Society and realized that some of the data that with the shoplifting prevention program wasn't working. So we reached out to the Retail Council of Canada and got some realistic stats and started building a new program. And this was the outcome. One of the things that we found, and as we were reaching out to the RCMP, other policing agencies throughout the province, is only 25% of shoplifting was done by teens, 75% by adults. The biggest stat for me is always the cost that the breakdown of how much it costs the Canadian retailers, which is it's over $10 million a day walks out of stores, and that's always just a shocking statistic to me. As well as it costs the average Canadian an extra $300 to $500 in lost recovery. So we designed the program, and we designed it in a couple of different manners. We designed it so that it can be delivered in person, via one-on-one, via group, or via email. There's 8 sessions on the cause and effect of shoplifting for the offender in the community, and it creates the opportunity of self-awareness and personal responsibility. Shoplifting is one of those, it's difficult to pinpoint to somebody why they committed a crime. In situations, and shoplifting is one of those where it's hard to identify why they did what they did. So this program gives them an opportunity to break through and figure out where they need support and help. Shoplifting, we tried it the traditional way of meeting with the store representative, having everybody having their supports in place and doing the traditional circle. But we found that first of all, it meant our shoplifting prevention officers or the representatives for the store would have to be in our offices almost 24/7 to facilitate the conversations. And the outcome seemed to be always the same. They wanted to have something for the individual to go through, and the individual who had committed the crime wanted to have something to help them. So we worked really hard on building the session topics. The first one was all about the effect of shoplifting, the effect of shoplifting, including some descriptions of different types of shoplifters. The next is self-awareness, self-esteem, difficult feelings, boundaries, communication, relapse prevention, and the last session, we call it the letter. At the end of every session, there's only 3 questions, and you'd be amazed at some of the answers that we get. The first question is, what have I learned from this session? The second question is, how does what I've read in the session apply to my life, and give some examples. The third question always refers back to the session and asks the participants to plan moving forward. The Justice Services team looks for well thought out answers, and if they notice something like someone is talking about not having enough food for their family, we'll get them connected to food sources in the community. And we look for those small little things in there. If they talk about having, that they were dealing with an episode of depression, have you checked in with your mental health worker? If you don't have one, here's some resources for you. We talk about the benefits to the community. The RCMP are able to make a referral quickly, reducing the time spent on the file by up to about 4 hours. It saves money, time, and resources for our overburdened court system. It connects people to the resources in the community that are available. I cannot stress this one enough. Connect people. It helps to identify and address underlying issues of the behavior that they want to work towards changing. This is one of my favorite quotes from one of our clients. She point blank told me that if she had never gone through this program, she feels that she could have possibly died. That was where she was at in her world. She was shoplifting so that her food order did not appear on a receipt, and then she took the food that she had shoplifted and was binging. By the time she was arrested, she told us that it was the 5th time that she had done this in the past week. And 5 times in a week, and it was the 5th time that week that she was caught. We were able to connect her with an eating disorder specialist, and I connected with her about 2 months ago to prepare for a few different things, and she said that she is doing very well and has stayed in contact with her eating specialist. It's easy to wrap this up. This program is really cool. We've actually have translated it into Spanish, French, and we're doing a few other languages. We have some past participants that are working on doing it in Punjabi and in Tagalog, which is just totally incredible. We've adapted using the COVID piece by meeting with our clients using Zoom, any option that we can. One of the things that we have had to change is meeting with the client face-to-face to start off with. That was one of our biggest issues, was we had to deal with not being able to do one-on-one having those conversations. So we do them through email, which is not our favorite. Phone calls, again, not our favorite. But we have access to Skype, Zoom, even the Duo on on the Google Docs. We've taken to adapting because we want to see people and get that connection built with them. I can honestly tell you, in the 6 years since we have been working on developing this program, I have never seen such amazing work done by people who just wanted a chance to have that conversation. And it's been a really really eye-opening process for us. When I first started at John Howard Society back in 2014, we had received probably 36 shoplifting files. And last month, in the month of July, 2020, we received 59 new referrals. It's a retail crime that, you know, kind of slides underneath the radar, and a lot of times the courts are too busy and will not take on a theft under 5,000 charge because they just don't have the capacity. And so the loss prevention people in the Central Okanagan really understand that a lot of people are not stealing to cause harm, and that they just need to have some extra supports. And so they use our program quite extensively. And we're able to share that we're able to use that. We share the program as often and as much as we can. So if anybody is interested, you're welcome to get in touch with me, and we'll make sure that you can get the program.
That was wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing about that program and being so willing to make it available to other communities. And it's awesome that it's already been translated so many times. Okay, well, now we have finished up the presentations a little earlier than we normally do, which is fine. So just an opportunity for anyone in the audience here to submit any questions you may have for Nathalie or Michelle, any pieces that you'd appreciate further clarification on, or questions about how a program that they've mentioned might be adapted to the community that you work in. Here's your chance. We did have one question earlier on from Brianne, and I believe this is posed to Nathalie. So can you just give us a bit more clarification on what you mean by individuals who identify with female development?
Yeah, so the program Girls Circle was brought up as potentially exclusionary by using girls, and when there's plenty of trans youth out there who identify as girls that may appear as boys and are going through that phase of figuring out their own gender identity. So we wanted to keep the program open, so it's anyone who identifies as girls or who identify along with some of the I guess realities of living as a girl during that time. So it's a non-exclusionary attempt. That's what the language is attempting to say, that
sure.
You're welcome. If you identify, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the clarification there. Wanda has come through asking how she might get in touch with someone for information on the shoplifting prevention program. So Michelle has shared her email address. It should have come through on the chat box, but we can make sure that that's embedded in the blog post that follows up after this event for sure. One question coming in from Emma Jane, and I think this probably refers to your comments, Nathalie, about the safety of an online space. Do you have any suggestions about how you could make it more safe for youth accessing online spaces for support such as these?
Yeah, there's definitely using a secure platform where there's actually a platform I've been exploring. It's called Circle, and it's specifically for restorative justice and circle style dialogues. So getting the right platform where people can all see each other at the same time and experience a similar version. Also the physical spaces. If schools have physical spaces available where they can be in quiet rooms where they're not going to be interrupted, that's a really important part too. And also really focusing on those guidelines, spending maybe extra time talking about what it means for confidentiality online. and really stressing that and kind of maybe going through some scenarios, whereas usually we just come up with the guidelines, write them on the board, then point back to them. This might be a little bit more intensive in kind of explaining what does that mean. Yeah, no screenshots, no secret listening, and really just, I guess, drilling that in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Hopefully
It's
that.
still a learning process, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we're all in that same situation, to be honest. But I think it's an excellent question and something for us to continue to engage in.
Yeah, and if anyone has ideas or resources, please share them.
Yeah, absolutely. Question has come in from Samantha for Michelle. So for the shoplifting prevention program, do you ever find that you have repeat clients? And if you do, what do you do differently with them the second time round that you might be working with them?
This has come up a couple times. We've had a few repeat offenders come through, I guess I hate saying offenders, but we had a few repeat clients come through. Usually there's a lot of time in between when we have them come through the first time. And so we take a really good look at what was going on in their life that, brought them back to these type of behaviors. We may work with them a little bit more intensely, a little bit more one-on-one, instead of dealing with, maybe doing the online email piece. But for the most part, it's generally there's something in their lives that the circumstances have changed, and we need to get to the root cause of what's going on, and we address that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Michelle, I have a question. If you, is the program, is it a group thing or an individual thing?
It can be either or. It's very flexible.
Oh, wow. So if you had, say, 10 referrals one week, you could, and everybody agreed, you could get everyone going, like 10 people could go through the program at once?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
But we find that because of the personal nature of the process, we find that actually offering it via email is the most satisfying for people, because they get to work at it at their own pace.
Oh, wow.
And we encourage them to, not to do too many sessions at a time. We encourage, a minimum of 1 per week, maximum 2 or 3 per week, because it can get very overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, what's the length of the program? Like
8 sessions.
Sessions, about 1 hour, like sort of 1 hour each?
Depends on the individual.
Yeah. Wow, okay, that's great.
And this was you were providing the service via email prior to COVID. Is that right,
Yes.
Michelle?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've taken to, because of course not everybody has access to email, or so my team has met individuals in the park, and and trying to find safe space, to have conversations with people has been, of course, very difficult. We live in the Okanagan. Everybody wants to go outside and hang out in our wonderful spaces. So finding private spaces has been a little difficult, but we've been able to make it work for the most part.
Okay. A question from Sanaz. Michelle, do you only get referrals from stores where this has occurred, or from courts as well?
At this time, we don't have a memorandum of understanding with Crown, so they may get sent back to the RCMP to us. We have received some referrals through probation. And the other thing is, we offer this through one of our roles at the Okanagan Correctional Center. So we offer this program at the OCC, and then that also ended up getting shared to Surrey pretrial and Abbotsford pretrial, or Alouette, sorry.
Right. Thank you. Just for those across the country, Alouette is the Women's Provincial Correctional Centre in BC. Any other questions from anyone else on the line?
actually have one more question about the shoplifting program. I've been thinking about designing a shoplifting program for a while.
Go ahead.
Because when I used to run the community justice program, like 50% of the cases were shoplifting, and we did them on a one-on-one basis and would reinvent the wheel every time. I was wondering about your inclusion of victims' voices, or did you ever have do facilitations where the person would come face to face with, if it was a community store or something, the owners who they had harmed?
It's actually, we actually leave that to the store to choose.
Oh, okay.
So as part of our referral process, they can actually click, they can choose to have a RJ process, or they can ask for the individual to go through the shoplifting prevention program.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
Right. Well, this is good to see. Facilitators kind of even finding out pieces from each other. So I think Sanaz is also interested in some more information. Just checking here. I'm assuming that there's no cost to anyone to attend or be involved in this program.
No.
No. And if you want more information about the shoplifting prevention program, we will be embedding all that information into the blog, which is on the John Howard Society BC website, and also on John Howard Society Pacific, depending which one you land on. And Michelle's very kindly we'll be making her email available too if you have direct questions. Another question from Brianne, and this is for Nathalie. So it appears that the Girls Circle borrows from Indigenous restorative and rehabilitative practices. Is there inclusion from the Sook Nation or other First Nations around Victoria that contribute to the development or delivery of the program?
We haven't collaborated with the local nations around the delivery of the program, although we do often have First Nations students in the group, and we will ask them to bring in teachings or to bring in any topics that so we'll kind of view the girls as knowledge holders, and we'll ask them to share any topics or stories, and specifically kind of view them as knowledge holders. Depending on the topics, but no, we haven't actually collaborated with the nations for the development of the program. But that that would be a really interesting project to do that.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? Some appreciation from the attendees. Thank you very much to Michelle and to Nathalie. So appreciate the time you've taken today to speak about the programs that you're leading. Yeah, for obviously further questions, you can follow up once we get our blog live. And just a plug that this is going to be a monthly session ongoing. We'll shortly be issuing a call for presenters. So if across the country you have a program of any topic related to John Howard Society services that you feel would be really valuable to share with the rest of the community, or if you know a speaker who you found really inspiring, or you think could share their knowledge with the rest of the group here, please let us know. You can contact us through our website. So with that, you'll be hearing from us again soon. And thank you again to Nathalie and Michelle. Have a lovely day, everyone. See you later.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.